Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, today we've got an amazing entrepreneur who is incredibly talented. You're going to hear just how talented in a second when I brag about some of his milestones and accomplishments. But today's guest, his name is Bryant Vander Weerd. Bryant is the founder and creative director of Full Pour Media, an award-winning creative agency specializing in the food and beverage industry. They work with clients both in the US and abroad to plan, produce, and execute marketing and promotional strategies. Now, here's the crazy part about Bryant and his accomplishments. He has won 3 Emmy Awards for his work, and Full Pour Media has won 9 craft beer marketing awards for their work in marketing and storytelling. And I think that this is such an important component of today's episode, is we're not just going to be talking about video and how that's important for your business. We're really going to talk about one of Bryant's true skills and passions, which is the storytelling that makes videos so effective for your business. So I'm not going to say anything else. I'm excited about this one. Let's dive straight into my interview with Bryant Vander Weerd. All right, Bryant, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Yeah, good to meet you, Brian.
Heck yeah, likewise. Obviously, we've got a lot of good stuff we're going to dive into here today. But first things first, take us beyond the bio. Who the heck is Bryant? How did you do all these crazy things from winning Emmy Awards to doing really cool, talented work? Break that down for us, your backstory.
Yeah, man. So I started my video career in the TV news world. Went to school for it. As much of a formal education as you can. Did a couple internships, again, with the kind of the goal that I thought I was going to retire a TV news videographer, the rest of my life. So if I was going to do that, I didn't necessarily want to do the day turns, the fires, all of those kind of things that you see on the news. There's so many other more feature-y stories. I don't want to say softer stories, but things that you can dig a lot deeper into beyond just kind of like the day turn news things. So again, if I wanted to be a career news videographer, I wanted to tell these awesome stories. And I was lucky enough to intern at certain stations and work at certain stations under and alongside some really talented videographers in the TV news storytelling industry, especially when I moved out to Denver, Colorado in 2013, that was. And Denver's in the news world's what's known as a storytelling market. There's 2 pretty prominent news stations out there who like to focus on those longer form kind of storytelling pieces. So again, being fortunate enough, being kind of, I don't want to say lucky, but, putting myself in the position to be mentored by these folks and really kind of hone my craft a lot more. That's where I won my 3 Emmy Awards was in Denver. Really kind of the I don't want to say the peak of my career. I'm still growing, right? But that was a hell of a peak for sure. Winning those throughout the years.
Yeah, I love that overview, Brian, especially because, is that the Emmys that I see behind you right now, just chilling on the counter?
Just subtly placed back there, yeah, on my coffee table.
I love it. It's very cool. So listeners, you may not be able to see this. If you hop on YouTube, you will see them behind Brian. I think that is so cool. And obviously, it speaks volumes to the incredible nature of the work that you've done, not only the impact of it, but the quality that you do it. I think that those two are both equally important when it comes to doing extraordinary work. And I'm super curious because hearing your background in news, obviously, we're all familiar with telling stories in the news when we turn the TV on at night, but somewhere along the way, your brain said, well, this is also directly relevant for brands and for businesses, and whether it's in the food and beverage industry or elsewhere, you saw that direct correlation. Talk to us about that bridge that you crossed.
Yeah, it was really, when I stepped out on my own, so I was in TV news in Denver. I went to corporate America right around 2020 time is when obviously they told us all to go home. And so I had a lot more time on my hands. I wasn't laid off. I just had a lot more time on my hands and was kind of toying with the idea of going out on my own, doing a lot more freelance work. Should I just go full-time freelance? What exactly it is? What do I want to do? And I knew I was good at storytelling. I knew I was good at video, from my years of experience. But what do I also like? What do I enjoy? Well, this is Denver. This is Denver, Colorado. So there's a lot of craft breweries around. And, I hung out with some of my old friends from the TV news world who were beer nerds. And, we like to nerd out about beer. And there was a couple really good craft breweries down the street from me. So I wanted to merge what I was good at, which is storytelling, with what I cared about or what I, admired, which was the craft brewing world. So really started out doing content, telling stories, marketing strategy for craft breweries. That's where the name Full Pour Media came from, was that it was very, very beverage specific. And this kind of niching upwards or expanding of our client list has been a fairly recent development, like within the past year or so, just taking a look at what else is out there, the needs that exist, and even the craft beer market is entering a more mature phase. So there's less of that kind of super sexy popular growth. And so the strategy is still needed very much. The stories are still needed very much, but it's more important than ever for us as an agency to diversify, to look around and say, where else can we offer these same kinds of services?
Yeah, I love the way you talk about both the macro and the micro. The macro, obviously, looking at that craft beer industry. I still remember when it was super hip. I remember when I moved to Los Angeles, there were only the hippest neighborhoods that had those craft breweries. But as that industry matures as a whole, you also have your finger on the pulse, macro level, but also micro level with your own agency's movements. And part of it is obviously at your core is you're not just videographers, is that you are storytelling through video. You said those words, and I love how clearly you own it, because you back it up as well, as that you are good at storytelling. What does that mean? What is the art and science of storytelling?
It's just learned. It's a craft. It's honed. Again, doing it for so many years, doing it under so many different mentors, was really the impetus behind it. So kind of looking up to other folks and seeing, what they're doing, and kind of, here, the questions that they're asking. And it really does. It boils down to questions and the content. A lot of times it's to go back to it. It's not about the beer that's produced. It's the story behind the beer. It's why this particular thing, or was there something interesting that happened during the brew day that caused you to name it this particular name? I've run into a handful of brands like that. So just immediately knowing that there are kind of stories behind the creation of certain beers, certain releases, that's going to apply. Keep going out, right? Keep going out. Each brewery, each restaurant, each brand has its own unique story, has its own unique backstory, or their why. The why they got into this business is so special, is so important to them. That's worth telling to the general public. And a lot of times these folks get in and start a business, but and maybe they know how to brew a beer, or they know how to cook, or they know how to do this and that, but they don't know how to tell their own story. They don't know how to get their brand out there, or how to attract their target customer. They may not even know what their target customer is. So that's obviously where we come in as that creative arm, that marketing arm, to really bring out the story behind their brands.
Yeah, what I'm really hearing from you, it's an important perspective for each of us to take in our own lives and in our own businesses, which is find the story. The stories are there. We have to look for them, and we have to find them. And to come back to the newsroom, for example, I think back to like second grade. I was a total news junkie. I always looked up to the newscasters that were on TV. And in second grade, I remember our teacher saying, well, yeah, when you want to cover a news story, you have to ask who, what, where, when, why, and how. And those were the preliminary questions that we asked. What do those questions look like these days, Bryant, as adults, instead of me just being in second grade?
I always loved that why. I mean, I recently asked myself that, why, not in a negative way, but it's a challenging way to myself, is why are we doing this? Why this particular niche? Why are we in business? I think it's important for everybody to ask why they do what they do. I was reading that Simon Sinek book, Start With Why. And that's really was kind of the beginning of my thought process around that. But I would say, yeah, that's got to be the most important question to me. And in an interview, whether it's video or otherwise, getting into people's why is always going to be the most emotionally charged, whether it's in a good or a bad way. Why do this at all? Why start a brewery? Why do you care enough to get this out there? I mean, it nearly instantly it gets at the heart, the actual, sometimes literal heart, the emotions of people's purpose.
Yeah, and that's obviously a powerful component in and of itself that you just brought up, which is the emotion behind these videos. And it's something that obviously you and I not only enjoy the things that we do, but we also very much enjoy business. And so from a business perspective, when we talk about marketing or sales, we so frequently, actually, you know what? I'm going to piggyback off your Simon Sinek point, where he always talks about the limbic system, is that's where our emotions lie. Our emotional part of our brain is where we actually make decisions from, not the logical part of our brains. And I think that video can so uniquely capture those emotions. That's why I love podcasting. Obviously, we're audio first, but hearing our voices is so different. Hearing the inflections, the tones, all of that is so different from just reading words on a paper or on a computer screen. What is it about that emotion? How do we capture that emotion in a video? Because a lot of listeners, Bryant, and I'm sure you hear this from clients where they're like, I'm not good on video. Like, how am I going to capture people's emotions? I'm not captivating on video. How do you fight back on that?
Oh man. I think nowadays there's so many different types of video, right? When I think about that, when I think about, a business owner or somebody going on camera, it's more in those quick, I always say quick and dirty, but it's just those real quick and easy, Instagram reels, social reels, that there's so much more, that is involved beyond just like sticking your own face in front of it. I mean, I think it's important to have your face on these reels, get yourself out there. People fall in love with the face versus the brand. It's just a faceless brand versus this is my neighborhood brand. This is the owner. He lives down the street, kind of thing. Advice is you don't need to really say a whole lot of super powerful, super deep, super actionable things. It's just being present, being on camera, period. If you're not comfortable with speaking, don't speak. It's like starting small is always so important. Just getting yourself used to it. Getting out there is always that first step. People are always afraid to take that first step. I'm afraid to take that first step a lot of times in a lot of my personal and business life. So I get that. I fully get it. But it is such a ease into it kind of game. It's always worth it. I mean, anytime we, for a client, are featuring the owners or put the owners on camera or, take photos of them and post them on social, it always does well. No matter, this is like geographically irrelevant. It could be in California, it could be in Maine. People love to see faces, and especially if they know, oh, this is the owner, or if they're familiar with you, it's going to work. It's going to pay off. I mean, people are so much more bought in when they see the face behind the brand.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As someone who works from coffee shops 90% of the time, I so agree. The coffee shops where I quote unquote know the owner, whether they actually know me or not, and I've ever interacted with them, it feels cool to know, hey, that's the person who, like, this was a dream of, I want to open a coffee shop one day. And there they are. They actually did it. It's such a cool thing. And with regards to that resistance that maybe people feel about having themselves on video, the other point of resistance that I'm sure you face is people who say, well, my business is boring. Like, there's no stories here. Nobody wants to watch a video about craft beer, for example. I think about all those Apple commercials where, like, they can make headphones seem like the most innovative, captivating products on planet Earth with the way they describe them, the videography that rides up the curves of the product, all of that. Bryant, what's your answer for people who feel like their business or their products or services are quote unquote boring?
You're wrong. No, and in the nicest way possible. Yeah, I mean, you are mistaken. There was a reason that you went into business. There's a reason that you opened your doors. Again, going back to that find your why. You believe that you have a valuable something to offer the public, whether it's a fun place to meet a friend and have a beer, whether it's your take on XYZ fusion dish. You would not go through this whole painful process of opening a business, of opening a food and bev business, of opening a brewery, if you didn't think that something was worthwhile. And just that alone, just your passion behind it, your blood, sweat, and tears, your sweat equity behind it is enough right there for a wonderful place to start. Again, you just have to start. It's just like making those first initial steps, and it can be complicated. I certainly understand, how you got into business because you like doing what you do, not because you like talking about yourself. I certainly run into that all the time, but on a baseline, you got into this business because you care. Whatever business you're in, you got into it because you give some type of a crap, and that's worth talking about.
Yeah, for sure. You're definitely way more patient than I am at helping people through that. When people say that their business is boring, I revert back to that Henry Ford quote of whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you think your business is boring, you're absolutely correct. It is boring. But Bryant, you help people smash through that. And I so respect and admire your work because of that. You've already brought up, for example, Instagram Reels, TikTok videos, those vertical style videos that are all the rage right now on social. For people who are out there thinking, well, I'm running a business. Like, what am I going to do with these videos? Is that what you mean? Or are they just going to live on social? Or are they going to go on my website? What are the practical use cases of videos in storytelling to actually enhance our businesses and brands?
Yeah, let me count the ways. There is that short form, quick and fast, Instagram Reels, and putting things on stories as well is obviously key. But those fast clips are really great for just day-to-day grinding things out. Again, social media is its own completely own animal that social media is easy to do. It's more difficult to do well, is always what I say. So it's worth doing. I don't think that's any secret anymore to anybody. But you've got so many more options nowadays than just vertical cell phone video. Video content on websites performs well. Video content period is shared like exponential, like 1,200% more than stills and text and images, excuse me. So whether you're making short YouTube videos or you're having somebody kind of come in part-time to produce this content, it's worth it. 80-something% of all internet traffic now is video content. So like any and everything going down the pipeline, 80% of it, 80% of it is video. And that comes from, I believe Cisco Systems, the internet people, put out video stats every year, and they're just growing. Like they're growing more and more. So whether you're doing small or whether you're doing large form production, do video. People that aren't are certainly going to start falling behind, and they already are falling behind.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, if we think even about our own consumption habits, gosh, when I started my first business when I was 19, it was all blog posts back then. I was reading so many blog posts. Bryant, I can't tell you the last time that I actually read a blog post, because you're right. I do turn, whether it's short form or long form content, I'm always actually consuming that video stuff. So I really appreciate those insights. I think that stat you threw at us, that is a big stamp of approval and challenge for all of our listeners to actually say, hey, am I creating this stuff for my own business? Because you're right. You said it very succinctly. You're being left behind already. So I think it's so important. With that in mind, I feel like you probably have an unfair advantage when it comes to video, and I'm going to tie it in with branding and strategy as well, because you do work in an extraordinarily crowded industry. You talked about the maturing of the craft beer industry, for example. There's 1 million craft breweries now. Actually, probably literally, I'm not using hyperbole there. There's so many. What is it? How the heck do these brands, you work with so many cool brands all across the country, which I think is so cool. What is it about those brands that they find in those stories, that you help them find in those stories, that can help them stand out?
I think first and foremost, it comes it comes with, the brand, the brewery, the business, first and foremost being bought in to making the investment. I mean, video is certainly no cheap date, especially large production crews and everything else. So folks that are doing it are taking that leap. They're going hard. Those are the folks that we work with, again, because the scopes are bigger, the scales are bigger. I talked about vertical video on that smaller scale. But yeah, it's really just paramount. It's paramount that anybody who wants to get their name out there in any way, shape, and form, just get going. Just kind of start from square one. Whether it's working with an independent contractor in your local area to build out some video content, or hiring remote VAs to help you write some short form stuff that you can maybe post on LinkedIn, etc. The ROI is there, whether it's monetary or energy. I really can't stress that enough.
Yeah, I want to echo that as well for listeners who may be struggling with social, for example. You brought up LinkedIn, and it's something powerful that I've learned so many times throughout the years. It's not something I'm the best at being on top of, but video actually always gets the most reach as well across different platforms. Is when we do live streams, for example, for this podcast on LinkedIn, our live stream written post will get, this much reach, but then we do a live stream and it gets exponentially more reach. So I think it's really powerful that these social networks, these websites want us to create video, and they reward us for creating video, which leads me to, you've dropped the P word a few times on us here today, production. A lot of people are going to be worried about how expensive is this stuff? How complicated is it? How much gear is involved in this? What are some of those? Ease those concerns, because we can do it as big as we want or as small as we want. What are some of those different models that you've seen that work for production for companies, whether it's kind of like their landmark video of, hey, this is the one we're going to invest in, versus just, hey, on a daily basis, keep your audience, keep your customers informed of what's going on? How can we master production at the big and small scale?
Yeah. Nowadays, it's so the barrier to entry is so low for that small scale production. You can go on any electronics website. I'll leave the specific brands out of it, but you can go on to really any website, camera website, and get like a video vlogging kit, right? That comes with a ring light that I've got my little ring light set up here, and a USB microphone that I'm holding, and your a little cell phone gimbal thing. You're all in for like $200, and you're doing just that much more, just a little bit more than the gal next door to you, than your neighbor, than your competitor, to give your content just that little tick of advantage, of bump. Just give it a shot. There's all-in-one kits. There's so many reviews out there nowadays. We are in the internet age. You can always look up reviews and everything else, but there's so much entry-level equipment out there. On the other side of it, on the larger scale, so many different considerations to take. The folks who contract with us can tend to be kind of again, like I said, larger orgs who have marketing, whether it's CMOs or marketing departments, but need have larger budgets for larger productions that can afford to fly us out places, or afford 3 to 5 days worth of shooting, 18, 20, 30 grand kind of productions. But even looking locally, if you want some video for your website that you don't necessarily want to just have phone video, you want a nice banner with some drone shots and everything. So many, obviously local connections. There's film schools in and around your area. There's there's like Upwork, like freelancer marketplace websites that you can look up. There's Facebook groups. There's got to be Facebook groups in whether it's your city or neighboring cities. Kind of doing that research that there are local folks. If you want this content, but you don't necessarily have the budget to kind of produce with 5 to 8 different crew members, there's always a sliding scale. There's folks with sliding scales of talent. Obviously, this is where it gets. I could talk for a whole hour on just this, obviously. So there's like always like that tipping point of you don't want to pay $200 for somebody and expect them to come with 5 crew members and everything. So there's always that kind of budget, value, scope. But if you're going to be putting something together that is going to have a lot of eyeballs on it, if it's a website banner, if it's a 5-year anniversary mini documentary, whatever it is, certainly worth doing the research to make it look as good as you absolutely can with the budget that you do have.
Yes, very well said on a difficult question that we all face as business owners, which is why, Bryant, I want to transition and talk to Bryant, not just the subject matter expert, but also Bryant, the CEO and founder of Full Pour Media, which is an agency that has built quite the reputation. I've read some of your reviews. I love how many awesome things that people have to say about the work that you and your team do. And with that in mind, I want to give you the stage because I think it's interesting to hear not only, it's kind of like that concept of like the cobbler's son has no shoes. And I remember when I owned an SEO agency, we didn't spend any time on our own SEO, and it's just something that happens. So knowing that you are a storyteller at heart and it's something that's so passionate for you, what is it that makes Full Pour Media so special?
Oh man. I would say it is that it's that storytelling kind of backbone. It's that storytelling foundation. I no hate to any neighboring agencies or competing agencies, but I see so many, let's bring your story to life kind of taglines. And it's admittedly like that was the first tagline that I had, this was pre Full Pour Media, but it was something that's just kind of like the first thing that comes to mind, and really doing like that critical thinking behind, okay, we're all bringing stories to life now. We're all bringing your ideas to life, whatever it is. We're all these are just such a common thing. Like, what can you do to set yourself apart? For us, obviously, it was niching. It was niching as specific as we needed to, and sticking with it too. Putting myself when it was just me, putting myself in the right conversations with the right people. Obviously, living out in Denver, there was a lot of craft beer media anyway. So, kind of being in that target rich environment certainly helped. And just sticking with the craft beer thing, but then also sticking with the storytelling piece of it, being very secure. What do I do well? What do I know I do well? It's storytelling. Okay. And now it's more than just video. There's branding, the story, the quote unquote story, leaks into every single aspect of running the business. So let's lean hard into that. We are a creative agency. We are a storytelling first agency.
Yeah, I love hearing that perspective, especially when we tie it in with even the flow of our conversation here today, which listeners know we never have pre-planned questions, but hearing your own flow from the newsroom and the stories that have guided those news stories that you all were covering on the air, it's such, I want to say that word natural progression. It's never natural and it's never linear, but it is something that has followed you through your career to the point where you do something exceptionally well and you deliver that for other clients. So I absolutely love that. Bryant, we also love having the real conversations here on this show, and I love highlighting that things are hard. It's a recurring theme in our content here, and a lot of listeners might be thinking, well, Bryant, you are amazing at what you do. You're super creative. You're super talented. You had experience in your industry, and now you've got 3 Emmy Awards. It must be a walk in the park for you to get new clients. So highlight some of those challenges that you did face when you started out with Full Pour Media versus how different those things are, and what are the different things that you continue to think about today when you look forward to your continued growth with Full Pour?
Yeah. I think at first it was just not knowing what the hell to do at all. It's like not really having a way forward. I had a ton of, storytelling mentors. I didn't really have a ton or any at all of entrepreneurship mentors. And I'm one of those people who, I don't want to say learn by committee, but I love it. Like it takes a village kind of thing. I think is the metaphor I'm trying to stick with here is just I like having kind of being surrounded by my village. My support system of other people I can kind of go to and ask dumb questions. That took a while to form. Obviously, being from a world where everybody was, whether it was corporate or otherwise, most of my friends were employees. None of them really owned their own business, anything like that. So I kind of came up short on the mentorship side, on the, this is the example I should follow side. But the challenges persist today. It's just kind of where are they different? I've got the foundation, 4 years in now, we've got the foundations, we've got the systems, we're building out systems constantly. We're building out processes constantly. We're growing the email list constantly, but these are all just things that I sort of started to tack on. It was, I'm very much I would love to do this perfectly right off the bat. And here's the exact perfect way to do it. And the entrepreneurship journey has been just absolutely terrible for that mindset because it's the exact opposite. It's just, it's, I don't want to say trial by fire, but kind of, it's learning as you go, making your mistakes, taking your hits. I'm still taking hits, I'm still sending out proposals and not getting, not hearing back. I'm still kind of coming up against cash flow issues. It's certainly not a walk in the park. The struggles are just different. Maybe at first it was kind of baby giraffe, shaky legs kind of thing, but now it's, I'm a little bit more mature, a little bit more developed, but I'm doing a lot more about what's our target customer now. Where is the ideal place for us to land? Here's this and that. So the fact that I'm struggling persists, but the struggles have changed, right? Like the subject matter behind them has changed.
Yes, gosh, that's the real stuff. Bryant, I'm so appreciative of how transparently and openly and generously you share that with our audience, because listeners, whether you're a entrepreneur or you're an entrepreneur or a seasoned entrepreneur, I know some of you 8-figure entrepreneurs out there that regularly tune into the show. And no matter where you are, this is the important message, is that I love that concept of the weights don't change. We do. If you and I are lifting a 20-pound weight every single day, 6 months from now, that 20-pound weight is going to feel much lighter. It's not that the weight changed. It's that we changed. And Bryant, hearing those real life things from you, that's straight from entrepreneur to entrepreneur. I think it's really powerful insights for every single listener. So super appreciative of that. And I always love asking this last question because I don't know where guests are going to take it, and especially with your vantage point, because you are so talented in so many different ways. I'm curious to see where you go. And that is, what's the one takeaway for listeners here who are for sure going to feel a little bit of added pressure to start incorporating video into their business and into their branding strategies? What's the one takeaway that you hope everyone says, either I'm going to start thinking about this or asking myself this, or I'm going to take action on this one thing because Bryant told me to?
I always love that, that Cisco statistic. It's everywhere, man. It is 85% of all the internet traffic. And brands that don't do it are really putting themselves, at a disadvantage, like really kneecapping themselves. And I would reiterate, it's really easy to start. Do a little bit of research, get you a little bit of phone camera gear. Just sit down and get in the practice, in the rhythm of just starting, because everybody else certainly is. And it's only going to benefit you. You're going to be a lot more comfortable on camera. You're going to be a lot more sure in your own offerings. If you can kind of hear yourself say it, maybe you don't have somebody you can routinely soundboard off of. If you're out there kind of thinking about it, strategizing, putting it down on paper or digital paper, saying it out loud in front of a camera, practicing it like that, you're cementing those ideas of here's what I do, here's why I do what I do, here's our brand story in your own mind. And then you're going to cement that in the minds of your customers, your potential customers. But none of that's going to happen if you don't at least just get started. Figure out how the easiest way for you to get started and get it going.
Yes, really simple advice, but really powerful advice for everyone who takes action on what Bryant is sharing with us. I want to add the big caveat is that if you've never recorded a video before, then your first one is guaranteed to be your worst. It's not going to be good. And the only way to get over that hump, as Bryant just shared with us, is to start and keep recording and keep giving it a shot. Every single time you'll get better. Go back to my first ever episode. Episode 1 of this podcast was terrible. You all can find Bryant on YouTube. YouTube. And part of my research for today's session, I looked him up on YouTube. This is someone who speaks at conventions and conferences and events, and you'll see that he has refined his message and figured it out. It's an iterative process along the way. So I love that advice, Bryant. I so deeply respect and admire all the great work that you're doing. I know that listeners will be keen to go deeper into full pour media, because I'm going to say this before I toss it back to you to drop some links on us. Your brand is also so cool. Your website is incredible. You have so many cool examples of what you're doing for clients, real life projects that you all are working on. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, absolutely. We are on Facebook, on Instagram at Full Pour Media. It's the same on Facebook and on Instagram, and then fullpourmedia.com. That's our URL as well. Say that 10 times fast.
It's true. I get tripped up on those same sorts of things here on the air. But listeners, you know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find Bryant and his company, Full Pour Media, down below in the show notes. Wherever it is that you're tuning in, you'll find all of those links, as well as a link to Bryant's personal LinkedIn if you want to connect with him and thank him for being so generous here on today's episode. His business website is at fullpourmedia.com. That's pour as in you're going to pour yourself a craft beer after tuning into today's episode. So fullpourmedia.com. Bryant, I love this swag that you're showing us on video. That's a sweet bottle. So Bryant, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Cheers. Thank you, sir.